and you're unsure and you're scared sometimes and you feel like I'm not cut out for this. You are. We all are. We just have to quiet the chatter in our own head and be willing to focus on the priorities of his or her growth and development under your leadership, under your guidance, under your love and supervision.
Hello, and welcome to Talking Toddlers, where I share more than just tips and tricks on how to reduce tantrums or build your toddler's vocabulary. We're going to cover all of that, but here, our goal is to develop clarity, because in this modern world, it's truly overwhelming. This podcast is about empowering moms to know the difference between fact and fiction, to never give up, to tap into everyday activities so your child stays on track. He's not falling behind, he's thriving through your guidance. We know that true learning starts at home, so let's get started.
Hello and welcome back to Talking Toddlers. I'm Erin Heyer, your host, and this episode we're going to focus on how to take complete ownership of your toddler's growth, because I assure you, you are in the driver's seat. And I know in this modern day world that we're all trying to learn to navigate, there are powers out there or systems or people or mindsets that would like us to believe that you mom, you dad, you grandparents are really second fiddles to your child. That some people say, oh, it's all genetics. Some people say it's just the luck of the draw. Some people say all children are different and you just kind of figure it out and wing it. I say there might be threads of truth to each and every one of those concepts, but we as human beings understand, given the open mindset, that nurture and nature fit together and that you, mom, dad, grandparents can really shape your child, but you have to be in it. You have to be present. You have to be willing to step into your light, into your power, into your role. You've taken on this responsibility. It's huge, probably the biggest thing any of us will step into. And it's scary most of the time. I get it, but it's not that complicated. It's overwhelming, exhausting, like I always share, like you're in the middle of it. But I want to walk you through some pretty concrete daily descriptions of how you can support your child's early development, because you can do it. You can become the artist, become the sculptor, and your child will follow your lead. So I want to talk about morning routines, because I think that's often a very, very difficult period for most families, but it can also be this beautiful, brilliant opportunity to set the stage and build routines and build the rhythm of your family. And I've said this before in previous episodes, to sit down with yourself, maybe a journal, maybe just sitting with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee in the sunlight and really, really think, imagine what kind of family, what kind of lifestyle do you want to create? And really take note of what's most important to you. And yes, as I've shared before, I'm one of 9 children growing up in this organized chaos, mayhem most of the time. But there were still routines that we always ate dinner together, that we always cleaned the kitchen up together. Yes, there were fights and arguments and all of this, but there were a lot of routines that were just part of our lifestyle back then, in the 60s and 70s. And it really helped me understand how important finding that rhythm is. And now as a clinical therapist, I really, really understand how important that is. During my practice of 35 years back in the early 1990s, there was this one study that seemed to have laid the foundation to what early childhood development and what kids really need. And I think educators and parents and policymakers have pushed this one particular study that was extremely, what's the word? It was very skewed, and the design was okay for the time. It started in the mid 80s, and then it was published in the mid 90s because it was a 10-year study. It's called the 30 million word gap. Perhaps you've heard of it before. It was 40 years ago. There were only 42 families. They measured quote unquote communication episodes for 1 hour per month, late in the afternoon, and many policies, many parental guidance and educational training has been wrapped around this one study, because what it showed with just these 42 families, they broke them up into 4 levels from welfare to professionals across social economics. Yes, there was a bias because the welfare families were only Black families. So there were a lot of faults in this design. And yet, we've spent the last 40 years really using this to defend how we have set up daycare centers and preschool centers, and how we have created this false image of what parents need to do. I do think that there were threads of truth coming out of this one particular study, but you have to dive deep into all of the data to understand that it wasn't based on race, for sure. It wasn't even based on poverty. Yes, there are layers to this that we have to respect, right? That if you have a lot of financial stressors, and I've been there, so I get it, that there's a lot of tension in the air. There's a lot of moms and dads who aren't emotionally or psychologically present because there's worry, there's stress, you're overworked, or you're not quite sure if you're going to make your mortgage payment, or you're not quite sure, if you have enough money in the bank to go buy groceries. All of that is really, really stressful. So there's different energy in the household. I've shared before, I was raised pretty dang poor. I understand how that feels. I also understand that there were times in my marriage where we were shifting and the cash flow was not in our favor. So I do think there's a lot of truth and validity to that. But at the same time, the researchers, Risley and Hart, did look at the quality of communication between the child and the parent, primarily the mother. But the problem was not only the numbers of words that were or were not used throughout the day, but the quality and the type and the purpose of those communication. And the reason why I continually bring this particular study up is because, like I said, many educational systems, right? How we train our educators, whether they're at the preschool level or the elementary school level, as well as parent books and parent organizations and coaching and all of that. And then the policymakers is all based, or are all based, on this one particular study. And I hone in on what is the quality and the type of communication. So today's episode, I really want to walk through what could an average morning look like if you, mom mostly, but dads and grandparents, whoever are the primary caretakers, and it can switch, right? Monday, Wednesday, Friday might be mom's in charge, and Tuesday and Thursday is dad, or whatever the scenario is. But what could a nice, healthy, organized morning routine look like, and how can you help your baby and your toddler through everyday experiences develop attention, language processing, understanding, turn taking, sharing, as well as the quote unquote academic parts of language, right? The vocabulary, colors, opposites, all of those following directions, all of those markers that we use to measure progress. So let me just walk through 6 different stages of what the morning could look like with a couple of bonuses. So the first thing, and I've talked about routines, I've talked about using nursery rhymes, how to pull your child in. So perhaps you could just start by waking him or her up or greeting him in the bed or in the crib, wherever they are developmentally, with some kind of good morning song, right? And you can put lyrics to the happy birthday tune and make anything playable, right? You could say, good morning to you, good morning to you, good morning, dear Joey, good morning. And then you have that pregnant pause and they say to you or something of that sort, right? But if you find these natural routines, and it's critical to find a routine. So when he wakes up in the morning, he knows he's going to be greeted with some kind of ritual, right? The world isn't just happening to him. He is beginning to anticipate, right? And you can do this softly. If your child is kind of slow to wake up, you can do it loudly and boldly if they're waking up with, some piss and vinegar and some attitude. And you can really help them understand what goes on firstly in the day. Start their cognitive awareness of what's going on. You could even use the tune of the mulberry bush, right? You could say, this is the way we change our clothes, change our clothes, change our clothes. And you pull them in because there's a lot of repetition in these simple little nursery rhymes. You can leave off the ending and see if they will fill in the blank. Will they sing along with you? Will they use some gestures, getting their body movement, clapping their hands or rocking back and forth as they sit there? Or you could say, here is the way we make our bed, make our bed. Make our bed. And you see how I change the pitch, I change the rhythm, I over enunciate that first sound and the last sound because you are exercising, you're working out. Think of it like going to the gym and lifting 20 pounds or 30 pounds. You don't just haphazardly lift it up. No, you try to connect your effort with your bicep or with your quad, that you're lifting and pushing that weight. So just like singing a nursery song or reading his favorite book, you're over connecting with the sounds, within the words, within the patterns and the sequence, because you're coding his language. And I have always shared with all of my families, babies are born under construction. They're citizens of the world, which means that they're biologically ready to learn any language. Your job in those first 3 years is to code your primary language. Or if you're a bilingual family, then both languages, go for it. They're ripe and the window of opportunity to really master that native language is so much easier in those first 3 years. It's not that you can't improve his language when he's 7 or even when he's 13, but it's just so much easier to do it in those first 36 months. But that simple little routine, it takes nothing. It just takes purpose. That when you go to open up that door into your baby's bedroom, that you have intention to how am I going to set the stage for this morning? And then as you are changing him or getting him perhaps dressed or just changing his diaper, cleaning him up, you can do some morning stretches. Let's stretch up to the sky, and you're getting that early movement. So he's connecting his body and his mind and the environment. He's following your lead. You're following his lead. He could bend over and touch his toes. Oh, I like that. Let's touch our toes. And you can count your toes when you're down there, and then you can stretch back up again. You can put one arm up and then the other. So again, this is rich language. He's listening. He's following your direction, or he's taking the lead. There's some time so he can figure out what the heck is this crazy woman doing so early in the morning. But you are getting into setting the stage for the rest of the day. So we know that good sleep is critical. We know that movement is critical. And we want to set him up ready to learn, ready to acquire new information with whatever he's going to do that particular day. And like I said, jump 3 times or lift 1 leg, all of this rich language. As you say it, as you repeat it morning after morning, and you're doing it, you're connecting the language, the action, the movement, the meaning, all of that. Okay, so then the next, number 3, would be, let's make breakfast together. And this can always be a freaking nightmare. I get it. But I'll talk to you at the close of this about how you need to decide what your morning routine is going to be like. And yes, it's going to be very different if you have 2 children or 3 children. But you start with that 1 child, or you start with your 2 children, and you figure out that rhythm, right? So making breakfast, quote unquote, together. Again, connecting how we talk, how we eat, and how we play. And all of this, as you hear me describe these scenarios, are filling in those columns. And so we can, on a different episode, dive deep into food choices and the best to feed our brain, to feed our body, and to feed our self-regulation, because that's what we're doing. So pick something that's healthy, lean toward healthy fats and healthy proteins, and then you can have a little carb on the side, right? Eggs are always really, really, really important. And I remember when my daughter was probably 2.5. I remember calling. I had a personal trainer at that time, but I remember picking his brain and saying, "Hey, Richard, my daughter really likes eggs every single morning. Is that a bad thing?" Because in the 80s and in the 90s, and probably still now, but I think they've soft pedaled it quietly backwards, that eggs were bad for us, right? And he's like, "No, absolutely not. If she wants to eat an egg or 2 every single morning, go for it." And that's what my daughter did, I remember. But you can pre-make eggs. I make pretty heavy egg muffins. So there's a little flour in it, usually almond flour or coconut flour. I stay away from wheat. You can put some vegetables in it if you want, or some sausage meats or bacons or whatever, to spruce up the healthy fats and spruce up the good proteins that will be slowly digested in your system, so your child won't crash and burn 90 minutes later, right? If you give them dry cereal or a piece of toast, that is not feeding healthy brain development. Period. I know that's hard to say, or hard to swallow, or hard to hear, or any of those. I know it, but it's the truth, and we can talk about that more. But the idea here is that you make breakfast together, right? And I will actually link a great site called Low Carb Kids. And she is this formerly pharmacist who has, down in Australia, has really created this great online movement and energy. And she has courses and tons of recipes and really great hacks of how to get your kids to eat more healthy. But I will share that link down below. It's called Low Carb Kids. And she also has some good tips on batch cooking. And that really saved me as a professional woman, and that my husband traveled quite a bit. So the joke was I was a single mom Monday through Friday. But batch cooking for anybody, even now when we're empty nesters, my husband and I love to batch cook. It just is so much easier that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single day. And then you're less likely to pull out crap food or to order pizza or to do takeout or any of that less than optimal choices, right? But get them involved, whether it's to crack the shell and then you talk about the egg and the sliminess, how it feels, the yolk. You can whip it up. If they make a little mess, no big deal. I know dropping an egg is probably the worst thing to try to clean up first thing in the morning, but you can warm some sausage. Again, I always advocate stay away from the microwaves. That's a different conversation, but warm it up in your toaster oven or something. You can have these things cold in your fridge and you just warm them up or bring them to room temperature and they can eat them at room temperature. Those egg muffins we used to pop in our bag and eat them between school and dance class, that kind of stuff. But getting them involved as you're changing their clothes or their diaper in the bedroom, say, what do you want for breakfast? And you can give them a choice. Do you want scrambled eggs or fried eggs? Do you want an egg muffin or do you want a hard-boiled egg or whatever you have prepared for that day, right? Do you want blueberries or strawberries? Again, I lean a little far away from just feeding fruit every single day, but you can have a couple of strawberries after they eat the egg, right? And that should help regulate their system. It's tasty, it's healthy, it's nutritious, but it should not be leading the charge because it's not fat, healthy fat or protein to feed that brain, right? But you can pull them in. Here are 2 plates, put them on the table. Here's some napkins. Where do they go? Again, pulling them in. There's you, me, brother Bobby, and daddy. There's 4 of us. How many cups do we need? And he can count the little plastic cups. Again, pulling them in. Yes, does it take time? A little bit extra time. Does it take planning? Absolutely. Is it helpful for his social and well-being to be connected with you first thing in the morning? Absolutely. Right? And it takes a lot of patience. That's what it takes. And finding that rhythm. And it's a dance. You start when they're 6 months old. You start when they're 10 months old. You start when they're 18 months. Start wherever you are. And build that morning routine. There's a lot of rich language. So back to the 30 million word gap research and some of the data that came out of it, one of the critical pieces was that children need about 21,000 words. Again, this is baseline. This is the bare minimum. 21,000 words a day that is positive and that is reinforcing, right? Not always negative or directive, like sit down, stop that, eat 2 more, come on, we gotta go. That kind of hustle and bustle and rushed parenting that we all do, right? And we just need to be mindful of how do I compensate and here are 2 plates, put them on the table. Great. They're on the table and they, might be skewed or on the wrong table or whatever, but he is listening to you with intention and trying his best to follow suit. And that's key. And so when we think about 21,000 words a day, that's really, if they're awake 10 hours, that's about 2,100 words an hour. So, I calculated if you sang that morning song to him, good morning to you, that's about 35 words. So we have to be talking to our kids. And it's not just yelling to them from across the room, hey, it's time to, eat breakfast. Pull them in. Make sure there's no screens. And again, we'll talk about that. No screens before the start of the day. All right. And in my world, all toddlers would not have access to screens. But you want to build that rhythm. You want to wake him up into this 3-dimensional world and use every opportunity you have to model language, to shape his language, to build his attention, to build his engagement, to build his understanding. All of this starts from day one. Having him help you set the table, to pushing the button on the toaster oven, to opening up the fridge. Where can we find some cream? Do you see any cream up there? Visual discrimination, follow your direction. Now we're all done. What do we do with our dirty plates? Where do they go? And so he might be trying to use real words with you, or he might be pointing, or it might be approximated. You meet him where he is, but there's a lot of language between your good morning song, changing, some body stretches, let's make breakfast together, let's sit down and eat together, right? Again, that goes to, we have to teach our kids how to talk, how to engage, how to understand, and then that social language. And then we have to teach them how to eat and appreciate this food and chew it and swallow it. And there's tons of language around that, right? Show them how to chew and masticate your food with your lips closed. Use good modeling, model, right? Count your chews on your fingers. Oh, let's do it 20 times. And you're counting off on your fingers and helping them find that rhythm, right? You're smiling, engaged. You're sitting at the table. Even if you have very little time in the morning, you can sit down and have your cup of coffee. You can warm up an egg muffin that's healthy for them. Throw on a little ketchup if you want. My daughter is addicted to ketchup, has been since she could sit at the table. And share 10 minutes together. Have your coffee, and then you can bring tons of language. Whether he really understands or not, you have to break it down to their level. Do you want one more bite? Or are you done? And you can use baby sign language with it. I've gone back and forth throughout my career whether baby sign language was beneficial. And the truth is there's no evidence to support that it increases vocabulary. What it does do, which I think is better, is that it reduces frustration. It empowers them to communicate through gestures. And it can be homemade gestures, right? All done or more or hungry or thirsty. All of those gestures can be incredibly helpful when a child doesn't know how to articulate it yet. He can communicate his needs, wants, and desires successfully, right? That's the idea, right? But even if it's just brief, you have your cup of coffee and a piece of sausage. They sit down with you. They don't run around because that doesn't build attention. That doesn't build engagement. That doesn't build turn taking. And the reason why I continually go back and visit this kind of communication with your baby and toddlers. Not only is it laying the stage, but we now know that that the numbers of children that have been referred for early speech and language development or poor speech and language at the kindergarten level, that it's gone up 60% since COVID. And these are CDC numbers, and they're here and in the UK, in Canada, in Australia. They're consistent across the board. It's gone up 60%, the numbers of referrals of late talkers, slow talkers, poor attention, social and emotional regulation disorders. It doesn't have to be full-fledged autism, but more and more kids, as I've shared before, have more and more issues on the table, and it's hard to tease all of that apart. And I'm not saying that families, quote unquote, cause these problems, but what we have to recognize is that you are in charge, that you really, I know it's a huge responsibility, but I really believe if more and more families embrace the clarity of this, of finding routines, of feeding your babies, of going outside and moving more, of less and less and less screen time, of really building a healthy relationship through play and everyday activities, then we can navigate ourselves out of these kids falling off the cliff. So even if you're short on time, you can do this morning routine and get them awake and alert, engaged with the human voice, with the relationship, which is contrasted with, oh my gosh, we overslept. Let's go, 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 go. Let's grab something. Let's eat in the car. Let's throw on some clothes. Come on, let's get out the door. Gotta go, gotta go, gotta go. That's a very different rhythm to our life. And those days will be present, mind you. I get that. But they should be the exception to the rule. And you have to work with your partner. You have to work with all the family members. And if you have, say, an older kid, say you have a 4 or 5-year-old and now you have a 1 or a 2-year-old or thereabouts, and you can say, okay, this is what we're going to do now. This is our new family routine. And kids will follow along. They might balk the first couple of days. There's always that rule of 3, right? After the 3rd day, everybody, steps up and changes our behavior. But as you're sitting down and sharing this meal, whether it's a quick cup of coffee and a little muffin, an egg muffin, right? It's heavy on the eggs, less on the flour and the sugar. Back to that site I mentioned, Low Carb Kids, lots of great recipes for different healthier versions of muffins. Or you can make a quiche and have it in your fridge. That's quick and easy. But you sit down and you talk about it, right? And then, like I've shared before, when you go to the store, look, there's only 2 more eggs left in this carton. Ooh, let's get some eggs next time we go to the store. Let's write it on the list. Here's our grocery list. Again, helping them understand how this world is organized. I would start doing this around, 2 years of age, where you use a calendar, right? And really help them understand, oh, today is Monday. What do we do on Monday? Are you a stay-at-home mom? Do you have part-time help? In a future episode, I'll talk about the pros and cons about daycare and what you can do to navigate that. But everybody should have some kind of weekly routine. What do we do on Mondays? Do we go to the park? Do we go to the library? Do we, clean out the closet? Whatever your routine is, right? I strongly recommend a big monthly calendar so they can see how our human days are constructed, right? And that it's really hard. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to work with 6, 7, 8-year-olds to have concepts of time, right? The days of the week, the months, all of that are very abstract, very esoteric. And I know some parents will say, oh, they can recite the days of the week, or they can count, and all of that's just reciting, right? It's just raw data. We want them to be able to look on a calendar and understand. If today is Monday, then what day is tomorrow? And they can look at the calendar, right? And you can use a lot of visuals. You say you have a picture of a book, and you say, oh, on Monday we go to the library. And then you can, as their language expands, again, when we're getting closer to that 3rd birthday, yesterday was Sunday. So today is Monday, right? And you build those concepts of yesterday, today, tomorrow. Those are big concepts. And to have a visual model and to talk about it every morning or in the evening as you're getting ready for bed. And I've talked before, or there are a lot of people that talk about, even for us adults, right? Setting up those bookends. The evening routine and the morning routine is really important for us grown-ups, right? To have those routines to set the stage. And it's 10 times more important for us to teach our children, right? And go back to snagging 5 minutes of meditation or journaling and say, what kind of family life am I creating? And we're not, even though yes, it's stressful and overwhelming and exhausting and you're unsure and you're scared sometimes and you feel like I'm not cut out for this. You are. We all are. We just have to quiet the chatter in our own head and be willing to focus on the priorities of his or her growth and development under your leadership, under your guidance, under your love and supervision. Right? And it's the simple things, morning songs, sharing the breakfast, cleaning off the table, looking at the calendar, counting how many days until, you have a birthday party, or counting how many days until Aunt Susie comes to visit. Hey there, Mom. I just wanted to jump in and ask a big favor. If you're gaining benefit from these episodes, please consider leaving me a review. It's the only way I can expand my reach and find moms and dads and grandparents just like yourself. I'd be so grateful. I'll leave a link down below in the description to save you an extra step. So thanks in advance. Let's get back to today's episode. Now, a lot of toddlers like to talk about things in the past, right? They have these memories, right? And they reflect and they're trying to orient them. So they'll talk about the park, or they'll talk about grandma, or they'll talk about their friend Frankie or whatever. And you can use that and reference. Say, yes, we saw Frankie at the park yesterday. And we'll see him again in a couple of weeks. But you show them through that calendar, and then they feel less anxious. They feel more engaged. And even though conceptually and linguistically they don't get it, but the more you help them understand that we have these cycles, these patterns that will help them feel secure and relatable, right? If you can go back to some of the morning songs and the morning routines, you could even add the days of the week. Again, it's not about the memorization, but it's about the routine, right? And it's very common to use the theme song of the Addams Family to the days of the week. So it would go something like this. And please excuse my singing. Kids don't care, and I hope you don't care that my voice is a little froggy. And instead of snapping, you could clap for the younger kids. Slightly older kids, 3, 4, are fascinating with the whole snapping. And a little interesting sideline is typically snaps and whistling aren't mastered until around 7, give or take. Every kid is a little bit different, right? But they're fascinating with the whole snap. But they could clap or pound on the table. You could say, days of the week, days of the week, days of the week, days of the week, days of the week. There's Sunday and there's Monday. There's Tuesday and there's Wednesday. There's Thursday and there's Friday. And then there's Saturday. Days of the week. 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 And then you can slow it down. And again, I apologize. I hope you're laughing at me singing. But you can slow it down. You can point to the calendar. They could hop 1,000 different ways, right? To help them understand that this world is organized, that there are procedures, right? And that it's just not haphazard. And it really brings them a sense of calm. It brings them a sense of awareness of what's happening to them and with them, and that they have some power, some sense of control. No, today is Monday. Mommy has to go to work and you have to go to grandma's house. But tomorrow we can go to the park, right? And so you can help them organize inside their mind and feel grounded, right? The other piece, and again, every day, every morning is going to be different, but you're going to find your anchors. Maybe your good morning hello song, sitting down and sharing a quick breakfast together if you're rushed or if you have something pending that you have to get to. But you can use the calendar, and then you can also talk about the weather, because this will help transition into getting dressed or getting out the door. You can look out the window or you can step on the front porch. It's really, 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 really important for you and your baby to see that morning light, even if it's through the clouds. It helps with our circadian rhythm. It helps with those bookends, right? That morning light and then the evening sun setting, helping them understand internally, right, at the cellular level of how our days are these cyclical patterns. But you can step outside, look out the window, look at the weather. Again, a whole litany of language. How does it feel? Is it bright? Is it cloudy? Is it warm? Is it hot? Is it cool? Is it rainy? Is it snowy? Is it windy? Model for them. Even a 12-month-old can relate to this. Oh, do you feel that rain? As long as it's not thunderstorming. But put the hand out there or touch the branches or the leaves or the bush or the flowers, or better yet, step on the grass with your feet and get grounded. Get those electrons ground and helping with that circadian rhythm. I know some of you are probably thinking, well, that's a little woo-woo. It's not. It's science. Just Google it. I assure you. But it will help you and your baby and toddler and children. But there's a lot of language involved. Oh, is this wet or dry? It might have rained last night. It's not raining now. Do you think it rained yesterday? Again, tying in that language. And if we do this almost every day, then they're getting lots and lots and lots of repetition. So when we ask ourselves, how the heck can I get 21,000 words a day, right? Or 2,100 words an hour? It's through this simple language. You don't have to cut out time to sit down and drill cards. Yes, we need to use books as a joint attention and all of that, but you don't have to carve out special time. You have to feed your baby. You have to clothe your baby. You have to plan your day. Bring them into that conversation, right? I wonder, you can say to him, like, I wonder, looking at your neighbor, if Mr. Jones is awake. Do you see any lights on? I wonder. Again, helping them become aware and engaged in the moment. I hear something. What do you think that is? I can't tell you how many little toddler boys, I adore them, have just been totally smitten with the trash truck, right? And that they just love to see the trash truck go by, right? Or certain dog walkers to walk past their house every day, right? Or a snow plow. Or if you hear the police siren even, it's like, ooh, what do you hear? Again, bringing their auditory awareness to the environment. And that's how we wire their brain. That's how we take this beautiful bundle of joy that's under construction and wire his brain. That's what learning is. And language and connection and social engagement and higher order thinking and problem solving. Right? It connects them to the moment with language, with engagement, with action. You say to him, it's kind of hot outside. Should we wear long pants or shorts? Helping him think through the process. You give him that white noise, that white space. What do you think? Long pants or shorts? And then when you step into the bedroom, let's get changed. We want to go outside. It's sunny. Or we want to go outside and splash in the mud puddle, right? It's been rainy. Do we wear sandals or boots? And give them that opportunity to process, to think, and respond. You're setting the stage. It's rich language experience. You're building emotional regulation. You're building their engagement and connection with you through language and action. It starts with self-talking, right? You're talking about what you're doing, and then you're talking about what he or she is doing. You're building their automaticity to imitate you, right? Those motor neurons that are natural to us. He will imitate you if you give him the opportunity. And then you imitate him, and then you're building turn-taking. It's all connected. I wanted to just describe, you haven't even gotten dressed yet, but look at all the language opportunities. Look at the moments, even if that's a 45-minute window or a 30-minute window. You build the stage. You plan ahead. It's really, I can't tell you how important setting the stage in the morning. And if you have 3 kids, it's going to be a different rhythm. But hopefully you'll have the older kids able to help you. But the key is those bookends. And we'll talk later about the evening routine. How do we transition and have peaceful bedtime routines? And then you have a little window to yourself, whether it's an hour or 90 minutes, but you need your rest and your sleep too. It's planning, it's organizing, and then getting in sync with one another. Do you have a slow to rise child? I was very, very grateful that my daughter was an early morning riser like me. It helped. But I also recognized I needed an hour to myself. So I would get up at 5. She would get up closer to 6:30 sometimes. But I liked that quiet time for me. And can you build that in for yourself, just like you need on the other bookend? An hour or 90 minutes to yourself with your spouse to close off the day, right? I wanted to describe how the mornings can either be in your control or be a challenge. And the title of this episode is How to Take Complete Ownership of Your Toddler's Growth and Development. You set the stage. You get to decide, right? And you can do this. It's a process. Lots of families get stuck on particulars, like he's not responding to my name, or he tunes me out, or he only has 10 words. Meet them where they are. And the more you pull them into your world, our world, really. And I think it's just how the modern world has evolved over the last 30, 40 years, especially when it comes to babies and toddlers, kept them at an arm's distance, right? Yes, we know a feeding schedule and a napping schedule and all of that, but what about in between? How do we spend that time? It doesn't have to be highly structured. It should not be academic. A 2, 3, 4-year-old should not be expected to sit at a table. And I have a lot of concerns of how the daycare and the preschools over the last 3, 4, 5 decades have morphed into this unrealistic, I think unhealthy dynamic. And we can talk about that. And I have some other experts in this area that we can ask questions and see what's happening. What are your choices? And I know it's hard. I know it's personal. I get it. But I just wanted to give you a little snapshot of what does your morning routine look like and how can you upgrade? All right. So thanks again for your precious time and God bless. I'll see you next week.